Hey gamers, it's Wintermute here from Grind This Game, back with oxygen not included, and I'm looking at kind of a beta build of the oil upgrade. And there's so much in this update, so I'm going to try to cover it all in this episode, and we'll go pretty fast. But one of the first things I want to show you is this new overlay. It's called the room overlay, and it's in the top right here. And so now if you have certain items in certain rooms now, they'll be marked as all these different types. So barracks, for instance, is like a bedroom. So it has to be a certain size that has a max size of 64 and a minimum size of 12. So if you're building kind of 4 high, which is kind of standard for a lot of builds in terms of bases, it's 16 by 4 is kind of the max size. So it kind of shades it in, and it also gives a benefit. So the benefit is increasing the stamina by when they sleep. And here's a few others. So we got a mess hall up here. Relieves stress when they're eating in here. And then for the med bay, it needs at least one mess table, at least one med bay, and a washroom. And I put a hand washing station in here as well. And this helps quarantine. So each one of these has a benefit. So it's worthwhile kind of specializing your rooms like this. So one of the other major things in this update is, of course, the oil. So I'll start over here with the oil reservoir. So here's what oil reservoir looks like without anything on it. Kind of looks like a natural gas geyser, but a little bit different. So what you do is you build a oil well on top of it, and that's under Utilities, oil well. So it requires water to be pumped into it, and the water is kind of non-recoverable, so it's going to consume it up 5 kilograms a second, which is quite a bit of water actually. It requires 480 watts of power, which is quite a bit of power, but it outputs 1,000 grams a second of crude oil and some heat. So I've got one built here. So you can see the fresh water coming in. And the crude oil doesn't come out of a pipe, it just kind of drips out of this little tap here. So I've got a little oil reservoir underneath. And then I'm pumping the crude oil up into the base from here. And there's these new creatures here called Slicksters. They're really cool. They'll eat carbon dioxide and they'll give off crude. So if you pump all your waste CO2 down here, these guys will be really happy and they'll make oil for you, which is awesome. So once you have crude oil, you want to build an oil refinery, which I've got here, and it's under refinement, and we can see what it needs here. So it needs crude oil, 10 kilograms a second. It requires 480 watts of power, which is quite a bit. And it outputs petroleum, which is kind of like gasoline, I guess, or getting close to gasoline. But it also outputs natural gas, and it just kind of vents it into the room. So you want to be careful where you want to build it in a sealed room. It gives off a decent amount of heat. Yeah, so here it is in action. Crude oil coming in, petroleum coming out, and I'm dumping it in this kind of petroleum area here. And you'll notice there's natural gas kind of building up in this room. So you got to make sure this room doesn't get overpressurized as well, because it'll stop working. And this oil refinery requires a dupe to actually work on it, which is kind of a new addition. And because this is kind of a toxic area for the dupe, it's going to end up being high pressure natural gas. They need to wear a suit. So Catalina there is wearing a suit. I think there's a bug with the graphics, but there she is. Now it took me a while to get this set up and working properly, but the way suits work is you build a Exosuit forge. That's under stations. So we got 3 new buildings here related to suits. We got the forge. Takes a lot of power, 480 watts. So once you've built it, you can, it's kind of like the textile loom. You request what you want to build, and right now the only thing you can build is an Atmos suit. And it requires copper ore and reed fiber. So I've built a few of them here, they're on the ground. And then once you have the suits built, you need to build 2 things. An Exosuit Dock, which is kind of where you just hang the suit. So you'll do a request suit and you'll pick what you want in there, and you'll pick the Atmos suit, and they'll go grab the Atmos suit and bring it here. But this building also needs oxygen piped into it because it's filling the suit with oxygen. And then you'll also need a Exosuit Checkpoint. And like I said, this took a while to set up to get just right. I think if a door is too close to it, it won't work. So I added this space here. And sometimes the arrows are green, sometimes they're red, even if they're facing the same way. It might still be a little bit buggy, but... So I put the checkpoint right beside it, and it's supposed to face away from... What does it say here? A checkpoint must have an exosuit dock built on the opposite side its arrow faces. So that's kind of how it is right now. So the arrow is pointing away from the exosuit dock. So what they'll do is they'll run up here, they'll know to put on the suit, and they'll stick on the suit, and they'll come in here and do their business, work on this refinery, and then when they come back out, they'll hang up their suit and continue on. It's pretty cute. So once you have petroleum, there's a couple things you can do with it. The first thing I did was started to make plastic, and you do that with a polymer press. So we got that's under refinement. It also requires 480 watts of power. A lot of these new buildings require 480 watts. Quite a bit of power. And it requires petroleum as an input, requires power, and it outputs carbon dioxide through kind of its gas output. It dumps steam into the room that it's in. It produces a ton of heat, 162 watts, and it dumps out plastic. So here it is in action. It just dumps plastic on the floor like this, and it is dumping steam into this room. It's a bit hard to see, but... And then it's also dumping CO2 into this kind of cavity that I built here. So you could dump that CO2 into a room full of these little guys, these Slicksters, and that would get, you know, your oil. It's kind of not a closed loop, but a way to recycle the CO2. And also I mentioned there's a new high pressure gas vent here. I'm not sure what the limit is, but presumably it's higher than the average gas vent, which overpressurizes at 2 kilograms, I think. And then plastic is used for a bunch of stuff. You can make plastic ladders, a new type of ladder, and these have a run speed boost of 20%, which is nice, and they're resistant to disease, which is also very beneficial. Now, let's just watch Catalina here. As she goes to eat, she'll take off her suit, yay, and she hung it up here. The art's not finished yet, but anyway. So with plastic, you can build plastic ladders. You can also build plastic tiles down here. And they give a run speed boost of 50%. They also are antiseptic, so they'll help reduce disease. So the regular tile from before was only a run speed boost of 25. This plastic's 50, so it's really good. They'll be zooming around, especially when their athletics gets really high. So what else is new? We've got these new beds, these comfy beds, and they require three tiles of space. They'll basically force you to keep a space between them, and they'll gain more stamina from sleeping in them. So they look pretty awesome. They do look very comfy compared to the regular beds. We'll get a shot. When it's nighttime, we'll go take a look at them sleeping in them. Another new thing is the sink. So it's similar to the wash basin, but they don't have to like bring clean bottles of water and take polluted water away. You just pipe it like you'd pipe a lavatory. Clean water in one port and polluted water out another port. And I've got it going off into my polluted water pit here. Another new thing are these traps, animal traps, and those are under food. So you place a trap, and any kind of little animal like a hatch, he'll run into it and get stuck. And then you make a collection point using an animal delivery point, and then you can say what you want to be put in there. And right now we got bagged hatches. Now I think these are not working perfectly because once they put the hatch in there, the hatch doesn't come out anymore. Like he's stuck in there, I think. So even if we like, it says contents none, so it's just basically destroying hatches, which is probably not what the intention is, but eventually I think you'll be able to release them into a room so you can control where you have your hatches. That'll be really cool. Another new thing is where do I have one here? This Heavi-Watt wire joint plate. And it lets you build Heavi-Watt wire through a wall. Before you'd have to use a wire bridge, but this is a bit nicer looking. It has a pretty bad decor bonus though, but nothing compared to the Heavi-Watt wire. Actually, Heavi-Watt wire only has a -25 as well, so it's similar. It's the same thing as the wire, but it's a nice plate as well. So another use of petroleum is this new Petroleum Generator. So under Power, Petroleum Generator, and it takes in petroleum, and it gives off carbon dioxide, polluted water, similar to the natural gas generator. It outputs 2 kilowatts of heat, or sorry, 2 kilowatts of power, which is a lot of power, and quite a bit of heat, 100 watts of heat. So you're going to need to have a collection reservoir underneath it for the polluted water, and you'll need to, they just kind of vents the CO2 into the room. There's no gas pipe, so you'll have to deal with the CO2 as well, and all the heat that comes off this thing. And it makes a ton of polluted water, a kilogram a second. So yeah, polluted water, actually more than a kilogram. So this thing might not be the greatest thing to build unless you have a really good way to get rid of your polluted water, like purifying it through a liquid filter or gasifying it and burning off all the dirt, which is hard to do still. I'm not sure the oil well is working as intended. You'll see there's back pressure of 80% here, and we got a pressure release threshold of 75%. So I think the dupes will come in and release the pressure somehow when it reaches 75%, but none of them have been coming in. Oh, maybe because my ladder is broken. Haha. See if they come in. But I think once it hits 100, it stops pumping. Oh, there's another new thing, and that's the, under medicine, you've got they brought back the Apothecary. So make one of those. And there's a placebo pill you can make out of water and sand, and it alleviates disease. I'm not sure how effectively. And then there's a vitamin chew, which you make out of coal, which is kind of funny, because why would you eat coal? And Balm lily flower, which is a new flower, and we'll go find some of those. So here's some Balm lilies, and they require an atmosphere of chlorine and a body temperature between 35 and 85. They're basically a medicinal plant. Yeah, I think that's it in terms of new stuff, which is still quite a lot. A lot of stuff. I really like this idea of rooms, though. It just looks cool. It's nice to organize your base into kind of useful areas. We don't have our latrine area anymore. It's kind of part of this thing. Actually, it's here. We could make this a latrine area. So let's just seal it off and let's take a look. Yeah, now it's a latrine, and it relieves stress while they're in there. You'll notice. So here's our mess hall. If I destroy this, it's no longer a mess hall. And if I put the door out here, it's too large a room, so it's not a mess hall. So you got to make sure it's 16 by 4 or some kind of dimensions that add up to 64. There, now it's a mess hall again. Oh, we got overheat damage in the petroleum generator. Yeah, it's hot in there. Oh, it just destroyed itself. Yeah, so that thing gives off a ton of heat. So I'll have to either use Weezeworts or some kind of cooling system to keep it working. But I'm not sure it's going to be worthwhile to use. I guess we'll find out. You might petroleum building up might actually become an issue if you can't make plastic fast enough. I like how this just kind of poops out the plastic. Bloop. So many new things. I've obviously built this with debug mode. It's very cheaty, but I wanted to like explore all the things quickly. And then when the update comes out for real, I'll build a base from scratch without any cheats or debug. And I'm excited for the real release, but I'll keep playing around with it. If I find anything else new, I'll do an update between now and the release, which is I think in a week and 3 days. So really looking forward to that. There's going to be a lot of balancing pressures and liquids and so many more things to manage now. It's going to be crazy. So hit that subscribe button if you enjoy these videos, and as always, thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.